Welcome back to the second video of the second module of our MOOC on EU space governance. The previous video taught us that when space finally became a proper EU policy area rather than only a tool for other areas, a space institutional setup was developed. However, as we will see in Module 3, space is not an exclusive competence of the EU. Space is so vital to the national interests of the member states that they wanted to keep their own competence in space as well, in addition to the EU. Space is also a highly technical area, and before the EU was active in space, other European organizations had already gathered a lot of expertise on the operational side of space missions in Europe. And a good governance structure, of course, incorporates this existing experience. So to get a more complete picture of the institutional framework of EU space governance, we should also look at the way in which it incorporates national actors and European partner organizations. EU member states like France, Italy, and Germany have long been active in the field of space. They have national space agencies, telecommunication bodies, space commerce offices, and even space military forces. They have their own space programs, infrastructure, and space industry. National institutions of EU member states can therefore make a major contribution to the Union Space Programme, especially for its implementation. For that reason, EU member states can participate in the Union Space Programme, but they don't have to. Member states that choose to participate can contribute with their technical competence, know-how, and assistance. They can also make data, information, services, and infrastructure in their possession or located on their territory available to the EU. Member state contributions are particularly valuable in the area of space safety and security, where the EU is sometimes lacking in independent capabilities. The Commission or EUSPA can also entrust member states with specific non-regulatory tasks in the implementation of the space program. These tasks should be executed by space agencies and other specialized organizations within the member states based on agreements with the European Commission. From their end, member states that contribute to the EU space program have to take all necessary measures to ensure that the ground stations on their territories are adequately protected. Member states and the Commission also have to work together and with international bodies such as the International Telecommunication Union, or ITU, to make sure that the radio frequencies necessary for the Union space program are available and protected. This is because the EU is not a member of the ITU or other international organizations often, and cannot directly apply for protection of the radio frequencies that it wants to use for its program. We already saw in the first module of this MOOC that the history of space in Europe predates the EU. Cooperation in space between European countries first occurred through the ESRO and ELDO organizations, which were later merged into the European Space Agency. So for a long time, the institutional framework in European space governance had been based on two pillars, a national pillar and ESA. Now, when the EU became a new actor in space, the situation had to be readjusted. With the EU, European space governance essentially turned into an institutional triangle of two Europes in space, the EU and ESA, and the respective member states of these two international organizations. European space governance now had to combine national, intergovernmental, and for the EU, supranational approaches as well. In later videos, we'll see that this caused tensions and they have been addressed in a certain way. But for the moment, let's focus on the current role of ESA in EU space governance. ESA has long-standing expertise in the development of space missions and the design and operation of space infrastructure, and therefore they've always been a crucial part of the EU space program. We have seen that the main governance role in the EU space program is exercised by the Commission, and we have seen that EUSPA coordinates most of the operational tasks and performs security accreditation as well. Within this structure, ESA has been assigned specific tasks to implement the flagship programs of the EU, for which it has the best expertise. For example, for Galileo, ESA is responsible for systems evolution and for the design, development, and testing of parts of the ground segment and satellites. ESA is also responsible for upstream research and development activities for all parts of the Union space program. The Commission may also entrust ESA with other tasks based on the needs of the program. Of course, as the coordinator, the Commission has to make sure that these tasks do not duplicate activities performed by other actors in the Union Space Program. Finally, other European organizations and agencies with specific expertise can also be asked to perform specific tasks in the EU Space Program, and we can name a couple of them here. So, for example, we have the European Defence Agency, the European Environment Agency, Frontex, European Maritime Safety Agency, and SATSEN, which we covered earlier. All of these agencies fit into the broader institutional framework of the EU. However, a special role is reserved for EUMETSAT, which stands for the European Organization for the Exploitation of Meteorological Satellites. Like ESA, EUMETSAT is an independent international organization with a crucial role in EU space governance, mainly in the operation of Copernicus infrastructure. In fact, EUMETSAT is mentioned together with the Commission, EUSPA, the Member States, and ESA as one of the 5 key actors in the EU space governance framework. And as such, it has clearly identified tasks and responsibilities in the implementation of the program's components. This video discussed the second layer of the institutional framework of EU space governance, consisting of national bodies and European partner organizations. Now, to illustrate how all of these actors work together, let's take a closer look at the second flagship program of the EU, which is Copernicus. Copernicus is the EU's Earth Observation Program, originally called GMES, or Global Monitoring for Environment and Security. It looks at our planet and its environment in order to offer a variety of information services drawn from satellite Earth observation and in situ data. These services vary from climate change monitoring to border surveillance and external action. As expected, the European Commission manages the program, and a lot of the coordination tasks are delegated to EUSPA. But because Copernicus has an important security component, it requires advanced satellites, and it offers many meteorological applications, it is implemented in partnership with 3 actors. First of all, the EU member states. Secondly, the European Space Agency. And thirdly, EUMETSAT. The space component of Copernicus consists of 2 types of satellite missions: dedicated Sentinel missions developed by ESA and so-called contributing missions. These missions are contributed by member states of the EU as well as ESA and EUMETSAT. Member states, ESA and EUMETSAT are involved in other Copernicus aspects as well. First of all, the in situ component and ground calibration of Copernicus are developed by the Commission in cooperation with the member states. Secondly, ESA is tasked with the coordination and implementation of the space component and its evolution. And thirdly, EUMETSAT is responsible for upgrading and operating relevant parts of the Copernicus space infrastructure. Finally, to complete the picture, the implementation of Copernicus services is entrusted again to various agencies within the EU, depending on the actual service, such as the European Environment Agency, Frontex, the European Maritime Safety Agency, and SATSEN. So overall, a rather complex structure, but I hope this last example of Copernicus has made you understand a bit better why so many different actors are involved and how each actor has its own role.